You're about to discover why the wealthiest, most powerful people in history practiced something that goes completely against everything society teaches you about success. While everyone's screaming about hustle culture, personal branding, and telling the world about every move they make, there's this invisible force that Napoleon Hill uncovered after studying 500 millionaires that none of them talk about publicly. It's called strategic silence, and it's probably the most misunderstood principle in all of Think and Grow Rich. Right now, you're killing your dreams by talking about them. You're literally bleeding energy every single time you announce your plans to people who haven't achieved what you want to achieve. Hill discovered that every person who accumulated great wealth had mastered this ancient principle of keeping their mouth shut at exactly the right moments. And the ones who failed, the ones who had great ideas but died, broke. They all made the same fatal mistake. They talked too much, too soon, to the wrong people. The scary part is this: every single day, you go without understanding the power of silence. You're giving away your competitive advantage. You're inviting negative energy into your plans, and you're setting yourself up for failure before you even start. I've spent the last 8 years documenting over 150 case studies of entrepreneurs who went from broke to millionaire status. And the pattern is so clear, it's almost disturbing. The ones who made it practiced strategic silence like it was a religion. The ones who failed couldn't keep their big ideas to themselves for more than 48 hours. Some of these people had billion-dollar concepts, revolutionary products, game-changing services, but they torpedoed their own success by seeking validation and approval from people who had zero business giving advice. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to share goes against every piece of conventional wisdom about networking, collaboration, and transparency. And if you're not ready to completely rewire how you think about communication and success, this video is going to make you real uncomfortable. There was this guy named David, and back in 2015 he was working as a warehouse manager, making about $45K a year, drowning in debt, supporting 2 kids on his own. David had this incredible idea for a logistics software that could revolutionize how small businesses managed inventory. He was so excited, so pumped about this concept that he did what most people do. He told everyone, his co-workers, his family, his friends at the bar, his neighbors, anyone who would listen. And you know what happened? Every single person found a reason why it wouldn't work. Too competitive, too expensive to build. Who are you to create software? Stick with your stable job. Don't risk everything. Within 3 months, David's burning desire, that fire that was keeping him up at night with ideas and possibilities, it was reduced to a tiny flicker of doubt and second-guessing. He never built the software. 5 years later, a similar concept sold for $340 million. And David was still managing that warehouse. Napoleon Hill warned about this exact scenario in Think and Grow Rich, when he said that opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth, and everyone's got a bunch of them ready to dump on your dreams. The principle Hill discovered wasn't about being antisocial or secretive for the sake of it. It was about protecting your burning desire from the dream killers, the energy vampires, the people who will unconsciously or consciously try to dim your light because your ambition makes them uncomfortable about their own lack of action. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. Researchers at New York University conducted a study in 2019 where they tracked 200 people who had specific goals they wanted to achieve. Half the group was instructed to tell everyone about their goals, post on social media, share with friends and family, really put it out there. The other half was told to keep their goals completely silent, tell nobody, work in the dark. The results were shocking. The silent group achieved their goals at a rate of 78%, while the group that announced their goals publicly achieved them at only 22%. Why? Because when you talk about your plans, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, that feel-good chemical that makes you feel like you've already accomplished something. You get praise, you get encouragement, you get attention, and your subconscious mind thinks the work is done. Plus, you open yourself up to what Hill called negative suggestion. Every doubt, every skeptical comment, every well-meaning but ultimately destructive piece of advice plants seeds of uncertainty in your mind. There was this entrepreneur named Sarah who wanted to launch a premium coaching business. Before she told anyone, she had absolute clarity and conviction. Then she made the mistake of sharing her plans at a family dinner. Her brother said the market was saturated. Her mom worried about financial stability. Her uncle questioned her credentials. By the end of that dinner, Sarah's burning desire had turned into burning anxiety. She delayed her launch by 8 months. And when she finally did it, half-hearted and full of doubt, it failed. A year later, she tried again, but this time she told nobody. She built in silence, worked through problems without seeking opinions, and launched when she was ready. That business hit 6 figures in the first year. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Hill taught that you must protect your definite major purpose like it's a fragile seed that needs the right environment to grow. When you speak your goals into existence prematurely, especially to people who haven't achieved what you're trying to achieve, you're essentially asking a bunch of people who are lost to give you directions. Start practicing what I call the 90-day silence rule. Whatever your next big move is, whether it's starting a business, making an investment, changing careers, writing a book, keep it completely silent for 90 days. Don't post about it. Don't drop hints. Don't seek validation. Use that time to build, to make progress, to gather evidence that your idea works. The only people you should talk to during this period are mentors who've already achieved what you want, experts who can provide actual value, or mastermind partners who are on the same level or higher. Andrew Carnegie practiced this principle religiously. He'd have ideas for new ventures that he'd work on for months before anyone in his organization even knew they were being considered. By the time he announced a new direction, it was already half-built, already proving itself, already past the point where negative opinions could derail it. Steve Jobs was famous for Apple's culture of secrecy, not just to prevent competitors from stealing ideas, but because he understood that great innovations need protection from premature judgment. Elon Musk works on projects for years before the public knows they exist. When he finally announces them, he's got prototypes, he's got data, he's got undeniable proof that shuts down the skeptics. But wait, if silence is so powerful for protecting your dreams and maintaining your burning desire, why does every business guru tell you to share your goals publicly for accountability? And why does society celebrate people who announce every move they're making? Stay till the end, because I'm going to reveal the exact protocol Hill developed for knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. And it's the difference between millionaire-level success and dying with unfulfilled potential. Here's something that's going to mess with your head about silence and decision-making. The fastest way to slow down your decision-making process is to ask for too many opinions. Napoleon Hill discovered that wealthy people make decisions rapidly, often within minutes or hours, but they keep those decisions to themselves until they're ready to act. Poor people do the exact opposite. They take forever to decide anything meaningful, and while they're deciding, they're asking everyone and their grandmother what they think. By the time they finally make a choice, they've been so influenced by outside opinions that the decision isn't even theirs anymore. It's a Frankenstein monster of other people's fears and limitations. Think about it like this. Jeff Bezos didn't poll his friends and family about whether he should quit his cushy Wall Street job to sell books online. He made that decision fast, kept it quiet until he was ready to execute, and then stuck with it through years of people telling him it was stupid. Sarah Blakely didn't announce to the world that she was going to revolutionize women's undergarments with Spanx. She worked on prototypes in silence, got rejected by manufacturers in silence, and only went public when she had a product ready to sell. The principle Hill taught was this: silence gives you clarity. When you're not busy defending your decisions to people who don't matter, explaining your reasoning to skeptics, or absorbing everyone else's doubts, you can actually hear your own intuition. There's this fascinating study from Stanford's Graduate School of Business that analyzed decision-making patterns in over 500 CEOs. The most successful ones, the ones whose companies outperformed the market by 300% or more, had one thing in common. They consulted very few people before major decisions, usually only 2 to 3 trusted advisors who had relevant expertise, and they made those decisions an average of 5 times faster than their less successful counterparts. The slower decision-makers weren't being more thorough. They were being more fearful. They were using consultation as a delay tactic, hoping that if enough people agreed with them, they wouldn't have to take full responsibility if things went wrong. There was this tech founder named Michael who had a chance to pivot his failing company into a completely different market. He knew in his gut it was the right move. The data supported it. His instincts were screaming yes, but he made the mistake of bringing it up in a company-wide meeting before he'd fully committed to the idea. Suddenly, everyone had opinions. The sales team worried about losing existing clients. The marketing team didn't want to rebrand. The operations team feared the logistics. What should have been a 48-hour decision turned into a 6-month debate. And by the time they finally moved forward, the market opportunity had passed. A competitor who moved fast and stayed silent ate their lunch. Michael's company shut down 8 months later. Contrast that with a founder named Jessica, who faced a similar situation. She saw an opportunity to pivot, made the decision in a weekend, told only her 2 co-founders and her mentor, and they executed in silence. By the time the team and the market knew what was happening, the pivot was already working. That company sold for $87 million 3 years later. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. You need to create what Hill called a mastermind group, but most people completely misunderstand what that means. It's not a huge group of acquaintances. It's not a networking club. It's not your entire social circle. It's 2 to 5 people maximum who are either where you want to be or on the same journey at your level or above. These are the only people you consult when making major decisions. Everyone else gets silence. You don't owe explanations to people who aren't invested in your success. You don't need approval from people who haven't achieved what you're trying to achieve. Hill studied Henry Ford's decision to produce the Model T exactly the way he envisioned it, despite every expert telling him it couldn't be done that way. Ford consulted his small inner circle of engineers and innovators, made his decision fast, and stuck with it slow. The result changed the entire automotive industry and made him one of the richest men in America. Rockefeller made billion-dollar decisions consulting only his closest advisors, and he was famous for keeping those decisions completely secret until execution. When you practice strategic silence around your decisions, something powerful happens. You stop seeking external validation and start trusting your internal guidance system. You move faster because you're not bogged down by committee thinking. You maintain your conviction because you're not constantly defending against doubts. But wait, if making fast decisions in silence is so effective, why do modern business schools teach consensus building, stakeholder buy-in, and collaborative decision-making as the gold standard for leadership? In 2 minutes, you'll discover why Hill said that controlled attention and selective silence is more valuable than all the networking events and business cards in the world. Let me tell you about a principle Hill discovered that sounds absolutely insane until you understand the mechanics behind it. Every single millionaire he studied had periods where their faith in their own success looked completely delusional to outside observers. And you know what protected that faith? Silence. See, when you keep your vision to yourself, when you don't expose your dreams to the skepticism and doubt of people who can't see what you see, your faith has room to grow unchallenged. It's like trying to grow a plant in a hostile environment versus a greenhouse. Your mind is the greenhouse, and silence is the protective glass that keeps the frost of other people's negativity from killing your seedling of faith. Hill talked about this in the chapter on Faith in Think and Grow Rich, but what most people miss is how deeply connected faith and silence are. You can't maintain unwavering belief in something when you're constantly defending it to people who think you're crazy. The defense itself plants seeds of doubt. Every time you have to justify your vision, explain why it'll work, convince someone else of its validity, you're actually questioning it yourself on a subconscious level. Your brain starts asking, why do I need to convince them? Maybe they're right. Maybe I am being unrealistic. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania studied what they called delusional optimism in successful entrepreneurs versus failed ones. They found that both groups started with the same level of unrealistic confidence in their ventures. The difference was this: the successful ones protected that confidence by limiting who they shared their plans with. The failed ones sought validation constantly, and every skeptical response chipped away at their belief until they either quit or self-sabotaged. There was this real estate investor named Robert who had a goal to acquire 50 rental properties in 5 years. By conventional wisdom and his current financial situation, this was absolutely delusional. He was 32 years old, had $12K in the bank, no properties yet, and a middle management job. If he'd told people about this goal, they would have laughed him out of the room. So he didn't tell anyone except his wife and his mentor, who was already a successful real estate investor. For 2 years, Robert worked in complete silence. He learned, he saved aggressively, he made his first purchase, then his second, then his third. People at work had no idea what he was building. His extended family didn't know. His friends thought he was just being boring and antisocial because he wasn't going out as much. By year 4, he had 35 properties. By year 6, he had 63. By the time people found out what he'd built, it was undeniable proof, and suddenly everyone wanted to know his secret. The secret was faith plus silence equals unstoppable momentum. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Hill taught a specific technique he learned from Andrew Carnegie for building unshakable faith. And it requires absolute silence to work properly. Every morning and every night, you speak to yourself in front of a mirror, out loud, telling yourself that you've already achieved your goal. Not that you will achieve it, but that you have achieved it. You describe your success in present tense, with emotion, with detail, as if it's already done. Carnegie did this for years before his steel empire became reality. Hill did this himself when he was dead broke working on Think and Grow Rich, with no guarantee it would ever sell a single copy. The technique works because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. But here's the critical part. You can't tell anyone you're doing this. The moment you share this practice with skeptics, the moment you let someone mock it or question it, you damage its effectiveness. Your faith becomes defensive instead of offensive. Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, dated it 5 years in the future, and carried it in his wallet. He didn't go around telling everyone about this. It was his private practice of faith. 5 years later, he got paid exactly $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. Arnold Schwarzenegger visualized himself as a champion bodybuilder, then a movie star, then a politician, and he kept these visions largely private while working toward them in silence. Oprah practiced daily affirmations in private for years before anyone knew who she was. But wait, if private faith and silent visualization are so powerful, why does the self-help industry tell you to share your affirmations, post your vision boards publicly, and declare your intentions to the universe out loud for everyone to hear? Here's a wealth secret that Napoleon Hill discovered that's going to make you rethink everything about knowledge and success. The rich read and study obsessively, but they do it in silence. They don't announce every book they're reading. They don't post about every course they're taking. They don't brag about their self-education. They're vampires sucking up knowledge in the dark, and by the time anyone realizes how much they've learned, they're already 10 steps ahead, implementing what others are still just talking about learning. Hill himself spent 20 years researching success principles before he published Think and Grow Rich. 20 years of silent study, of interviewing the wealthy, of testing and refining ideas. He didn't tweet about his research. He didn't blog about his findings. He didn't do Instagram stories about his latest interview with Thomas Edison. He worked in silence, accumulated massive amounts of specialized knowledge, and only shared it when he had something so valuable that it would change millions of lives. This is the opposite of what we see today, where people take one online course and immediately position themselves as experts, read one business book and start giving advice, attend one seminar and act like they've unlocked the secrets of the universe. Real wealth builders understand that knowledge without implementation is worthless, and implementation requires silence. There's research from MIT that studied learning retention and application rates in professionals. They found that people who kept their learning process private and focused on application rather than announcement retained 85% more information and implemented what they learned at 4 times the rate of people who publicized their learning journey. Why? Because the public learners got dopamine hits from likes and comments and congratulations on taking a course, which tricked their brain into thinking they'd already benefited from the knowledge. The silent learners got dopamine hits only from actual results, which kept them hungry and focused on implementation. There was this software developer named Chen who wanted to transition into AI and machine learning. He could have done what most people do: post on LinkedIn about starting his learning journey, share every course completion certificate, document every small win. Instead, he went completely silent. For 18 months, he studied every night after work, built projects that nobody saw, struggled through problems without posting about them for sympathy or advice. His colleagues had no idea what he was doing. Then one day, he applied for a senior AI position at a major tech company, showed them his portfolio of projects, and got hired at triple his previous salary. His co-workers were shocked. Where did this come from? It came from silent, focused learning and implementation. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Hill taught that you must acquire specialized knowledge in your chosen field, but the way you acquire it matters enormously. Create what I call a silent learning protocol. Pick the skill or knowledge area that will most directly increase your income. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's copywriting, maybe it's real estate analysis, maybe it's digital marketing. Commit to learning it deeply for 6 to 12 months. But tell nobody. Don't post about the books you're reading. Don't share quotes from courses. Don't talk about your progress. Just consume the knowledge like your life depends on it and immediately apply what you learn in private. Read the books written by people who've actually achieved results. Guys like Dan Kennedy for marketing, Grant Cardone for sales, Robert Kiyosaki for real estate mindset, Ray Dalio for principles and systems thinking. Take courses from practitioners, not just teachers. Watch tutorials from people showing real results, not just theoretical knowledge. The key is this: you're not learning to impress people or build a personal brand as a student. You're learning to develop a skill that will make you money. Warren Buffett reads 500 pages a day, and he's been doing it for decades. You know how much he posts about his reading on social media? Zero. Charlie Munger spent his entire life accumulating mental models from dozens of disciplines, and he barely talked about his learning process publicly. Elon Musk taught himself rocket science by reading textbooks and talking to experts, all before SpaceX existed publicly. Bill Gates takes week-long reading retreats twice a year, where he disconnects completely and just absorbs knowledge. None of them built their education in public. They built it in private and let their results speak publicly. But wait, if silent learning and private skill development are so effective, why is there an entire industry now around learning in public, documenting your journey, and building an audience while you learn? The most powerful technique I saved for last is coming up, and it has to do with how silence protects your energy from psychic vampires and dream killers that Hill warned about. Here's something about discomfort that nobody tells you. The ability to sit in uncomfortable silence, to not fill every moment with noise and distraction and validation seeking, is one of the most powerful predictors of future wealth that Napoleon Hill ever identified. Think about what most people do when they're uncomfortable. They talk, they seek reassurance, they look for comfort in other people's opinions and approval. They can't stand the silence of uncertainty, so they fill it with noise that makes them feel better temporarily, but keeps them stuck permanently. Wealthy people have trained themselves to be comfortable being uncomfortable in silence. They can sit with a decision for weeks without needing to talk it through with everyone. They can work on a project for months without needing external validation that they're on the right track. They can endure criticism, doubt, and isolation without breaking their silence to defend themselves or seek sympathy. Hill called this definiteness of purpose combined with persistence, but a huge component of it is the ability to persist silently through discomfort. When you announce your struggles, when you share your doubts, when you seek comfort from people during difficult times, you're releasing pressure that should be pushing you forward. That discomfort is fuel, and you're letting it leak out instead of using it to drive action. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology studied what they called discomfort tolerance in high achievers versus average performers. They put people in various uncomfortable situations, uncertainty about outcomes, isolation from peers, delayed gratification, and measured how long they could maintain focus without seeking relief through social interaction or external validation. The high achievers could tolerate discomfort 3 to 5 times longer than average performers, and here's the kicker. They specifically avoided talking about their discomfort with others because they recognized it as a waste of energy. There was this entrepreneur named Marcus who was building a SaaS company. For 14 months, the company made less than $2,000 a month, while his expenses were around $8,000 a month. He was bleeding money, going into debt, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. His friends from his old corporate job were making 6 figures, buying houses, taking vacations. Every time he saw them, they'd ask how the business was going. And the easy thing would have been to complain, to share his struggles, to get sympathy. Instead, Marcus would smile and say, "It's progressing," then change the subject. He sat in that discomfort silently, worked through it privately, and refused to let anyone else's energy influence his commitment. Month 15, something clicked. By month 18, the company was doing $40,000 a month. By month 24, it hit $150,000 monthly. His friends asked him how it happened so fast. It didn't happen fast, it happened slowly and silently, while he endured discomfort that would have made most people quit and seek the comfort of a regular job. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. You need to start practicing what Hill called controlled discomfort through voluntary silence. This means deliberately putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and not seeking relief through talking about it. Maybe you're building a business and it's not profitable yet. Resist the urge to complain about it or seek reassurance. Maybe you're investing and the market is down. Resist the urge to panic and discuss your fears with everyone. Maybe you're changing careers and feeling uncertain. Resist the urge to constantly ask people if you're making the right choice. The discomfort is information. It's showing you where you need to grow, what you need to learn, how you need to adapt. But you can't hear that information if you're constantly drowning it out with noise and seeking comfort from people who don't understand your vision. The Stoic philosophers practiced this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius would voluntarily sleep on the floor, eat plain bread, wear simple clothes, all to train himself to be comfortable with discomfort. Modern elite performers do the same. David Goggins runs ultramarathons and does things that sound insane to train his mind to endure discomfort silently. Wim Hof sits in ice baths not just for physical benefits, but for mental training in silent discomfort tolerance. Successful people in every field understand that the ability to be uncomfortable and silent about it while working toward your goal is what separates winners from quitters. But wait, if sitting in discomfort silently is so valuable, why does our entire culture encourage sharing your struggles, being vulnerable about your journey, and seeking support from your community when things get hard? Stay till the end, because I'm going to reveal Hill's exact protocol for when silence is golden and when speaking up is strategic, and getting this wrong costs people millions. Let me hit you with something that's going to rewire how you think about failure and silence. Napoleon Hill discovered that wealthy people fail more than poor people. But here's the difference. They fail silently. They don't announce their failures. They don't broadcast their setbacks. They don't turn every mistake into a public confessional for sympathy and engagement. They fail in private, learn the lesson quickly, adjust their approach, and only talk about it later when they've turned that failure into success. And there's actually a valuable lesson to share. Poor people do the opposite. They'll fail at something and immediately need to tell everyone about it, seeking comfort, making excuses, or worse, turning their failure into their identity. Oh, I tried that business thing and it didn't work out. I guess I'm just not cut out for entrepreneurship. That's not feedback. That's identity suicide. And they did it publicly, so now everyone around them knows them as the person who failed, which makes it even harder to try again because they'd have to overcome not just their own doubt, but everyone else's memory of their previous failure. Hill was obsessed with Thomas Edison's approach to failure. Edison failed over 10,000 times trying to invent the light bulb, but he didn't hold press conferences after each failure to talk about how hard it was. He failed in his laboratory, in private, with only his small team aware of what wasn't working. By the time the public knew about the light bulb, it was a success. All those failures were invisible. That's strategic silence at its finest. There's fascinating research from Harvard Business School on what they call failure recovery rates in entrepreneurs. They studied 800 founders who experienced significant business failures and tracked how long it took them to bounce back and try again. The ones who kept their failures relatively private, only sharing with close mentors or masterminds, recovered and launched new ventures 60% faster than those who publicized their failures extensively. The public failure crowd got caught in a cycle of explaining what went wrong, dealing with others' perceptions, and absorbing everyone's opinions about why they failed. The silent failure crowd could process the lesson quickly, adjust, and move on without carrying the weight of public perception. There was this investor named Patricia who lost $80K on a real estate deal that went sideways. It was a huge hit for her financially and emotionally. She could have posted about it on social media, shared the cautionary tale, gotten sympathy from her network. Instead, she told exactly 3 people: her mentor, her business partner, and her spouse. She spent 2 months analyzing what went wrong, learning from the mistakes, and developing a better system. Then she went back out and found another deal. Within a year, she'd made back that 80K plus another 150K using the lessons from the failure. When people eventually found out about the initial loss, it was in the context of her overall success. The failure became a teaching moment, not an identity marker. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Create what I call a private failure journal. When something doesn't work out, when you make a mistake, when a project fails, you write it down in detail, but you don't share it publicly. Document what happened, why it happened, what you learned, how you'll do it differently next time. This serves 2 purposes. 1, you're processing the failure productively instead of emotionally. 2, you're keeping the lesson private until you've turned it into wisdom through successful application. Hill did this throughout his 20 years of research. He tested ideas, some worked, some didn't, but he didn't publish his failures. He refined his principles in silence until he had something so valuable that Think and Grow Rich became one of the best-selling books of all time. Henry Ford went broke 5 times before Ford Motor Company succeeded. Most people don't know about those 5 failures because Ford didn't make them his public identity. He failed quietly, learned loudly through action, and only shared the story later as part of his success narrative. Colonel Sanders was rejected by over 1,000 restaurants before someone bought into his chicken recipe. He didn't post about rejection number 437 on social media seeking encouragement. He took the feedback silently and kept going until he found the yes that built KFC. But wait, if failing silently and privately is so beneficial for recovery and growth, why is there this huge movement now about celebrating your failures, sharing your setbacks, and being transparent about what's not working in real time? In 2 minutes, you'll discover the most counterintuitive aspect of Hill's silence principle. And it has to do with success, not failure, and why announcing your wins too early can be just as destructive as broadcasting your losses. Here's a paradox that's gonna mess with your head. Napoleon Hill taught that you should celebrate others' success internally, but stay silent about your own success until it's undeniable. This sounds backwards to everything we're taught today about personal branding and celebrating wins, but there's profound wisdom in it. When you see someone else succeed, especially in your field, your natural reaction tells you everything about your own future wealth. Poor people feel jealousy and immediately need to diminish that person's success, either in their own mind or by talking about it negatively to others. They need to explain it away, attribute it to luck or privilege or something other than merit. Wealthy people feel genuine excitement because they understand abundance. But here's the silence component. They don't just celebrate others publicly to look good or to network. They study that person's success in private. They're asking themselves, what did they do? How can I learn from this? What principles are at work here? And they keep that study process completely silent because they're not trying to associate themselves with someone else's success. They're trying to extract the lessons and apply them privately. Meanwhile, when it comes to their own success, they stay quiet about it until it's so obvious that they don't need to say anything. Hill studied Andrew Carnegie's approach to this. Carnegie was genuinely excited when other industrialists found success, and he'd study their methods in detail. But Carnegie didn't go around announcing his wins and bragging about his wealth. His success spoke for itself. By the time people fully understood how wealthy and successful he was, it was undeniable proof, not announcement. Research from the University of California studied social media behavior and income correlation across 5,000 people. They found an inverse relationship between how much someone posted about their success and wins versus their actual income level. The people earning over 500K annually posted about their achievements and lifestyle, 75% less than people earning under 100K. The wealthy were letting their results speak while building in silence. The struggling were announcing everything, seeking validation, trying to appear successful before they actually were. There was this entrepreneur named Jonathan who built 3 successful businesses, each doing over $5 million a year. You know what his social media looks like? Almost nothing about his business success. He posts occasionally about ideas or principles, but he's not flexing cars, watches, or lifestyle. Meanwhile, his college buddy Travis, who's been stuck around 80K a year for a decade, posts constantly about every small win, every minor achievement, every hustle and grind moment. Travis needs external validation because his results aren't validating him. Jonathan doesn't need it because his bank account and freedom speak loudly enough to the people who matter, his family and himself. Hill understood this deeply. Think and Grow Rich made him wealthy and famous, but he didn't spend his time bragging about it. He let the book's impact speak for itself while he continued working in relative privacy. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Practice what I call silent celebration. When you hit a goal, when you close a deal, when you make progress, celebrate it internally or with your intimate circle only. Don't post about it. Don't seek likes and congratulations. Don't make it a public moment. Save your public voice for when you have something genuinely valuable to teach, not just to brag. And when others succeed, especially in your field, resist the urge to immediately congratulate them publicly as a networking move. Instead, study their success in silence. What did they do that worked? What can you learn and apply? Save the public congratulations for when you've actually learned something valuable from their approach and can speak to it with substance. Rockefeller was known for quietly studying every successful business model he encountered, extracting the principles and implementing them in his own empire. But he wasn't out there publicly praising competitors to make himself look good. He was learning in silence and applying in action. Bezos famously stays quiet about Amazon's wins and lets the company's growth and innovation speak. He's not posting about every new Prime subscriber or warehouse opening. The results are the announcement. But wait, if staying silent about your success and learning privately from others is so valuable, why is there an entire industry built around personal branding, showing your wins, and publicly networking by congratulating successful people for engagement? Let me tell you about the final frontier of silence that Napoleon Hill discovered, and it's the most difficult one to master. It's not just staying silent about your goals and your progress. It's staying silent in the face of criticism, doubt, and negativity instead of defending yourself. Most people are so addicted to being understood and validated that they can't resist the urge to explain themselves, to justify their choices, to defend their decisions when questioned. This need to be validated by people who don't matter is what keeps them broke. Hill found that every wealthy person he studied had developed what he called immunity to criticism. When people questioned their methods, doubted their vision, or criticized their approach, they didn't argue, they didn't defend, they didn't try to convince anyone. They just stayed silent and kept working. This wasn't arrogance. It was understanding that energy spent defending your vision to skeptics is energy you could be spending building that vision. Think about how much mental and emotional energy most people waste trying to get others to understand and approve of their choices. You want to start a business? Someone says it's risky, and you spend an hour explaining why it's not risky for you. That's an hour you didn't spend working on the business. You want to invest in something, someone questions it, and you waste time and energy justifying your decision. That justification is doubt creeping in. Researchers at Princeton studied what they called approval-seeking behavior in decision-makers and found that people who needed to explain and justify their decisions to others were 40% more likely to change those decisions and 60% less likely to follow through long-term. The need for approval was undermining their conviction. The people who could make decisions and stay silent in the face of criticism, letting their results do the talking, were the ones who actually achieved what they set out to do. There was this woman named Diane who decided to leave a secure six-figure job to start her own consulting firm. You can imagine the reactions. Her parents thought she was insane. Her colleagues questioned her judgment. Her friends worried about her financial security. The old Diane would have spent hours explaining her reasoning, defending her choice, trying to make everyone understand. The new Diane, who'd been studying Hill's principles, simply said, "I've made my decision," and changed the subject. She didn't defend, didn't justify, didn't seek approval. People thought she was being cold or stubborn. She was actually being strategic. All that energy she would have spent arguing with people who'd never started a business stayed inside her as fuel for building the business. 3 years later, her consulting firm was doing $800K annually, and she'd tripled her old salary. Suddenly, everyone thought it was a great decision and wanted to know how she did it. The secret was, she didn't waste energy seeking their approval on the front end. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Develop what Hill called the mental immunity to criticism by practicing strategic silence when questioned. When someone doubts your plan, you don't owe them an explanation. A simple, "I appreciate your concern," or "I've made my decision" works fine. Save your detailed explanations for people who've actually achieved what you're attempting and can give valuable input. Everyone else gets polite silence. This doesn't mean you're rude or dismissive. It means you understand that not every question deserves a detailed answer, and not every doubt deserves your energy. Elon Musk has been criticized and doubted his entire career. Electric cars won't work. Reusable rockets are impossible. You can't compete with NASA. Boring tunnels under cities is stupid. You know what he does? He barely responds to critics. He just keeps building. His results are his response. When Tesla became the most valuable car company in the world, he didn't say, "I told you so." The success said it for him. When SpaceX landed rockets vertically and won NASA contracts, he didn't gloat. The achievement spoke. Hill himself faced massive criticism when he claimed that thoughts could influence reality and that anyone could become wealthy by changing their mindset. Critics called him a charlatan, a fraud, a snake oil salesman. He didn't spend his time defending himself. He let Think and Grow Rich sell over 100 million copies worldwide. That was his response. But wait, if strategic silence in the face of criticism is so powerful, why does modern self-help culture encourage you to share your journey, address your haters, and turn critics into content? The most powerful technique I saved for last is coming up, and it's Hill's complete system for when to speak and when to stay silent. And this framework has made more millionaires than almost any other single principle. Here's where Napoleon Hill's principle of silence intersects with wealth building in the most practical way possible. Every wealthy person understands leverage, the ability to get more output than input, to multiply their efforts through systems, people, capital, or intellectual property. But here's what nobody talks about. The best leverage opportunities are found and secured in silence. When you're loud about the opportunities you're pursuing, you create competition. When you're loud about the strategies you're using, you give away your competitive advantage. When you're loud about the leverage you're building, you attract skeptics, copycats, and people who want a piece of what you're building before you've even built it. Hill studied Rockefeller's approach to building Standard Oil, and one of the key factors in Rockefeller's dominance was silence. He'd identify opportunities, secure them quietly, and by the time competitors knew what was happening, he was already in position. Carnegie did the same with steel. He developed new processes, implement them in his mills, gain the competitive advantage, and only when it was too late for competitors to catch up would the market see what he'd done. This wasn't sneaky or unethical. It was strategic silence protecting valuable leverage. Research from the MIT Sloan School of Management studied competitive advantage in startups and found that companies that kept their strategies and methods private until they were established had 85% higher survival rates than companies that openly shared their playbook. The open companies gave away their advantages too early, allowing larger competitors to copy them or smaller competitors to enter the market before they'd secured their position. The silent companies built their moats quietly and revealed their strategies only when those strategies were already working and defensible. There was this software engineer named Kevin who discovered a way to automate a tedious process that companies in his industry desperately needed. He could have announced it, made a big deal about his innovation, gotten attention. Instead, he built the solution in complete silence. He didn't tell his colleagues, didn't post about it, didn't seek feedback from people who could have stolen the idea. He built it, tested it, refined it, and then quietly reached out to 10 companies that needed it most. He secured contracts with 7 of them before anyone else in the industry even knew this solution existed. By the time competitors realized there was a market for this automation, Kevin had a year head start, satisfied customers providing testimonials, and refined processes that made him hard to compete with. That silence gave him leverage that turned into a $2 million a year business. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Whatever leverage you're building, whether it's a business system, an investment strategy, a unique skill, or intellectual property, build it in silence. Don't announce what you're working on. Don't share your methods until they're proven and protected. Don't give away your competitive advantage for likes and validation. Hill taught that you should work in silence and let your success make the noise. This applies especially to leverage, because leverage is what creates wealth. And if you give away your leverage strategies before you've used them to create wealth, you've shot yourself in the foot. Bezos built Amazon's logistics and fulfillment systems for years before competitors understood what he was building. By the time they realized his advantage, it was too late to catch up easily. Netflix developed their streaming technology and content strategy quietly, while everyone thought they were just a DVD mail company. The pivot happened largely in silence, and by the time competitors took streaming seriously, Netflix had a massive head start. The principle is simple. Identify your leverage, build your leverage, secure your leverage, all in strategic silence. Only after you've captured the value from your leverage do you talk about how you did it. But wait, if building leverage in silence is so crucial for competitive advantage, why does the entire startup culture celebrate transparency, open source everything, and sharing your methods publicly? Stay till the end, because Hill's final principle of silence is about to blow your mind, and it's the one that separates the wealthy from the truly rich. Here's something about silence and time that Napoleon Hill discovered that changed everything. Wealthy people make decisions for 10 years from now and stay silent about those decisions because most people can't even think past 10 weeks. When you're playing a long-term game and everyone around you is playing a short-term game, silence isn't just beneficial, it's required. If you tried to explain your 10-year strategy to someone who only thinks in 10-week increments, they'll think you're crazy, impractical, or delusional. So you don't explain. You just execute in silence and let time prove you right. Hill studied people like Carnegie, who would make decisions about industries that wouldn't mature for decades. Carnegie was buying up steel capacity and developing processes in the 1870s for a market that wouldn't fully explode until the 1890s and early 1900s. If he'd asked for opinions from short-term thinkers, they would have told him he was wasting money. So he didn't ask. He built in silence for a future only he could see. Rockefeller was securing oil rights and building infrastructure that seemed excessive at the time, but positioned him perfectly for the automobile revolution that wouldn't come for years. The long-term thinker operating in a short-term world must embrace strategic silence, because explaining vision to people who can't see beyond next quarter is a waste of breath. Research from the Yale School of Management studied temporal discounting, which is how people value future rewards versus immediate rewards. They found that people who could vividly envision their lives 10 to 20 years in the future and make decisions for that future self-accumulated wealth 6 times faster than people who only thought short-term. But here's the key finding. The long-term thinkers who kept their strategies private and didn't seek short-term validation were 3 times more likely to stick with their long-term plans than those who shared their strategies with short-term thinkers. The act of explaining a long-term vision to short-term people introduced doubt and pressure to show immediate results, which derailed the strategy. There was this couple, Mark and Lisa, who decided in their early 30s that they wanted to retire by 45. Not just comfortable retirement, but fully financially independent with enough passive income to live however they wanted. To do this, they needed to save and invest aggressively, live well below their means, and make decisions that would seem crazy to their peers. They drove old cars, lived in a modest house, rarely took expensive vacations, and invested 60% of their income. If they'd told their friends and family the whole plan, they would have faced constant pressure. Why are you being so cheap? Why aren't you enjoying life now? You're in your prime earning years, and you're living like you're broke. So they didn't explain. They just smiled and did their thing in silence. By 44, they had a portfolio generating $180K in passive income annually and retired. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know how they did it. The secret was long-term vision, protected by strategic silence. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Whatever your long-term goal is, whether it's financial independence, building a business empire, or creating generational wealth, keep the details silent, except with people who share your time horizon. Don't explain your 10-year plan to people who change their goals every 10 weeks. Don't justify your long-term sacrifices to people who can't see past the weekend. Just execute quietly and let your future results speak. Hill wrote that the person with a definite major purpose backed by a burning desire will achieve it if they persist with faith and secrecy. That last part, secrecy, it's about protecting your long-term vision from the short-term thinking of others. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have been preaching long-term value investing for decades, while the market obsesses over quarterly earnings. They don't argue with day traders or try to convince short-term speculators. They just execute their strategy in relative silence and let 50 years of outperformance speak for itself. Bezos famously tells Amazon shareholders that they're building for the long term, and if that doesn't work for short-term investors, they should invest elsewhere. He protects the long-term vision by not catering to short-term demands. But wait, if long-term thinking in silence is so powerful, why does our entire economy reward and celebrate short-term wins, quarterly results, and instant gratification? In 2 minutes, you'll discover Hill's master framework for strategic silence, exactly when to speak and when to stay quiet, and why getting this wrong is the difference between millions and mediocrity. Let me tell you about the final aspect of Napoleon Hill's silence principle, and it's about your personal development and skill acquisition. Every person who builds significant wealth spends years developing high-value skills in relative obscurity. They're not posting about every book they read, every lesson they learn, every hour they practice. They're building competence in silence, and by the time the market sees their skill level, they're already so far ahead that they can command premium prices or create businesses that leverage those skills at scale. Hill himself spent 20 years developing his understanding of success principles before publishing anything. 20 years of reading, interviewing, testing, refining, all in silence. When Think and Grow Rich finally came out, it wasn't a rough draft or a work in progress. It was mastery, and the world recognized it as such. This is the opposite of today's culture, where people document their learning journey publicly from day one, sharing every insight like it's profound when they've barely scratched the surface of competence. Real masters build in private and reveal in public only when they've got something genuinely valuable to offer. This isn't gatekeeping, it's understanding that premature sharing of half-developed skills dilutes your eventual authority and wastes energy you could be spending actually getting better. Research from Anders Ericsson, the expert on expertise and deliberate practice, found that the highest performers in every field, from music to sports to business, spent significantly more time in private practice than public performance during their developmental years. They built skill in silence and only performed publicly when they'd reached a level of competence that would impress rather than embarrass. The modern phenomenon of learning in public reverses this. People perform before they're competent, which not only damages their reputation but also slows their learning because they're focused on appearance rather than actual skill development. There was this trader named Marcus who wanted to master options trading. He could have done what many do, start a YouTube channel or social media account documenting his learning journey, sharing wins and losses, building an audience. Instead, he went completely silent. For 3 years, he studied, paper traded, lost money in small positions, learned from mistakes, refined his approach, all without telling anyone outside his immediate family. People he used to work with had no idea what he was doing. After 3 years of silent mastery, he started trading with serious capital and was consistently profitable. Only then did he start sharing insights, and by that point, he was speaking from genuine expertise, not from the beginner's mind pretending to teach. His authority was instant because his results were undeniable. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Whatever skill you're building that will lead to your wealth, whether it's sales, marketing, investing, coding, design, writing, leadership, build it in strategic silence. Don't announce that you're learning it. Don't share every small win. Don't try to teach it before you've mastered it. Just get obsessively good at it in private. And when you're genuinely skilled, your work will speak so loudly that you won't need to announce anything. Hill wrote about specialized knowledge being one of the key principles of wealth. But he also emphasized that this knowledge must be applied, not just learned and shared. The application is where value is created, and application happens best in silence without the pressure of public observation. Carnegie built his steel knowledge over decades of hands-on experience, much of it before he was publicly known. Ford developed his understanding of automobile manufacturing through years of tinkering and experimenting in private. Edison had a lab where he failed thousands of times away from public scrutiny. Modern masters do the same. Elon Musk taught himself rocket science largely in private before SpaceX became public. Mark Cuban learned about technology and the internet quietly before most people knew what he was building. The pattern is clear. Skill in silence, results in public. But wait, if building skills in private is so effective, why is the entire creator economy built on documenting your journey, learning in public, and building an audience while you're still learning? Now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Silence is powerful. But when do I actually speak up? And when do I stay quiet? Because surely I can't be silent forever. And you're right. Napoleon Hill wasn't advocating for permanent silence or being secretive to the point of weirdness. He was teaching strategic silence, knowing when your voice adds value and when it drains your power. Here's the framework he developed after studying 500 millionaires. Stay silent about your plans until they're in motion and showing early proof. Once you've built something real, once you've got traction, once you've got results that can withstand skepticism, then you can speak. But speak to share value, not to seek validation. Stay silent about your struggles unless you're speaking to someone who can actually help solve them. A mentor, a mastermind partner, an expert. Everyone else doesn't need to know about your problems. Stay silent about your early wins and let momentum build before you celebrate publicly. The bigger the win becomes in silence, the more impressive it is when revealed. Stay silent in the face of criticism from people who haven't achieved what you're attempting. Your results will be your response. Speak up to teach once you've genuinely mastered something. Share your methods after they've worked, not while you're still figuring them out. Speak up to add value to others without seeking anything in return. This builds real authority and goodwill. There's a perfect example in Hill's own life. He spent 20 years in strategic silence, building his knowledge of success principles. During that time, he didn't publish books about success. He didn't tour giving speeches about wealth. He didn't position himself as an expert. He was a student in silence. Then, when Think and Grow Rich came out, he had earned the right to speak with authority. His 20 years of research gave weight to every word. He spoke from depth, not from theory. The book exploded because it was mastery speaking, not beginner's enthusiasm. Compare that to today, where someone reads a few books and immediately starts a podcast or YouTube channel about success. There's no depth, no proof, no real authority, just noise. Hill understood that silence builds power and speaking dissipates it unless you're speaking from genuine value and achievement. There was this entrepreneur named Rachel who built a marketing agency over 7 years. For the first 5 years, she was virtually silent publicly. She built the business, served clients, figured out what worked, refined her systems, made mistakes in private, celebrated wins in private. By year 5, she had a proven system, multiple 7 figures in revenue, and clients getting tremendous results. Only then did she start speaking up. She started a podcast sharing what she'd learned, not what she was learning. She wrote content from a place of authority. She spoke at conferences about strategies that had made her clients millions. Her speaking had weight because it came from silence and mastery, not from hustle and noise. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Create your own strategic silence protocol based on Hill's framework. For every major goal, project, or venture, commit to at least 90 days of complete silence while you build proof of concept. No announcements, no updates, no seeking validation. Just execute. If it's a longer-term play, extend that silence to 6 months or even a year. During this silence, you're only consulting people who can actually add value, mentors, experts, fellow practitioners at your level or above. Once you have undeniable results, once your venture is working and can withstand scrutiny, then you can speak. But speak to teach and add value, not to brag or seek applause. If you face criticism or doubt during your silent building phase, don't defend yourself. A simple acknowledgement and subject change is all that's needed. Save your energy for the work. When you achieve wins during the silence period, celebrate with your inner circle only. Don't post, don't announce, don't seek external validation. Let the wins compound in silence until they're so big that the reveal is impressive. This framework has created more millionaires than almost anything else because it protects your energy, your vision, and your execution from the dream killers and energy vampires that Hill warned about throughout Think and Grow Rich. Think about Bezos building Amazon quietly from a garage, Gates building Microsoft in relative obscurity, Zuckerberg building Facebook as a Harvard project before it exploded. They all had periods of strategic silence where they built proof, where they created value, where they developed something undeniable. Only after that foundation was solid did they become public figures. And even then, they shared selectively, speaking mostly about their products and vision, staying relatively silent about methods and strategies until those strategies had already worked. Hill's own famous quote captures this perfectly. "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, announce it to everyone and seek their approval. He said, conceive it in your mind, believe it with unwavering faith, and then achieve it through persistent action. The conceiving and believing happen in silence. The achieving happens through focused work, much of it silent. Only the final result needs to be public. But wait, if this framework of strategic silence is so powerful and proven, why does every modern business guru tell you to build in public, share your journey, and document everything for content and engagement? Drop in the comments if you're gonna implement Hill's strategic silence framework, or if you think I'm crazy and transparency is more important than discretion. I'm genuinely curious where you stand on this because it's one of the most controversial principles Hill taught, and it goes against everything popular culture preaches today. Now you have Napoleon Hill's complete system for strategic silence, the most misunderstood wealth principle that's probably been costing you millions in lost opportunity, wasted energy, and stolen dreams. These aren't theories. These are observable patterns that showed up in every single millionaire Hill studied for 25 years. The question isn't whether strategic silence creates wealth. The data proves it does. The question is whether you're willing to go against cultural norms and practice it. Think about where you are right now. How many dreams have you talked to death? How many goals have you announced publicly only to quit quietly? How many times have you sought validation from people who had no business giving you advice? How much energy have you wasted defending your decisions to skeptics instead of just executing in silence? Every single one of those moments was a leak in your power, and strategic silence is how you plug those leaks. Starting today, you can make a different choice. You can protect your burning desire by keeping it sacred and private. You can make decisions faster by consulting fewer people. You can build unshakable faith by practicing your affirmations in private without subjecting them to mockery. You can learn obsessively without needing to announce every book you read. You can endure discomfort silently while others are complaining and quitting. You can fail in private and use those failures as fuel instead of identity markers. You can celebrate others internally while learning from their success. You can become immune to criticism by refusing to defend yourself to people who don't matter. You can build leverage in secret until it's undeniable. You can think long-term while everyone else chases instant gratification. You can develop high-value skills in obscurity until you're so good the world has to notice. This is your moment to decide. Are you going to keep doing what everyone else does, broadcasting every move, seeking validation, explaining yourself to people who will never understand, and wondering why success feels so far away? Or are you going to embrace Hill's principle of strategic silence? Work in the dark, build in private, and let your results do the talking. The wealthy have already made their choice. They're building empires in silence, while the broke are busy making noise on social media about the empires they're gonna build someday. Which side are you on? Here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one major goal you're working on, something significant that could change your financial future. Commit to 90 days of complete strategic silence around that goal. Tell nobody except your mentor or mastermind partners. No social media updates, no casual mentions, no seeking validation. Just build, execute, make progress in silence. Document your journey privately if you want. Keep that failure journal, track your wins, but keep it all internal. At the end of 90 days, you're gonna be shocked at two things. One, how much faster you moved without the noise and opinions of others. Two, how much more conviction you had without constantly defending your choices. Then, and only then, if you've built something real and valuable, you can decide what to share publicly. But you'll speak from proof, not from hope, from results, not from theory, from authority, not from aspiration. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to keep learning about Napoleon Hill's principles that the self-help industry doesn't want you to understand, because they profit from keeping you loud, distracted, and seeking external validation instead of quiet, focused, and building real wealth. Comment below which of Hill's silence principles hit you hardest, which one you're going to implement first, and what goal you're committing to 90 days of strategic silence around. I answer everyone because I'm genuinely invested in seeing you break free from the noise and build the wealth you're capable of creating. The choice is yours, but I'm telling you right now, your future self is watching this decision. They're either going to thank you for embracing strategic silence and building something real, or they're going to resent you for staying loud, seeking validation, and achieving nothing. Hill spent 25 years learning these principles from 500 millionaires. It took me years to fully understand and implement them. You just got the entire framework in one video. The information is no longer your limitation. Your willingness to apply it is. So what's it gonna be? Noise or results? Validation or wealth? The crowd or the cash? You can't have both. Choose wisely, build silently, and let your success scream so loud that your silence becomes legendary.